Hello, Packers fans. Welcome to another edition of the Pack Attack Cast. We've got breaking news today. Jaire Alexander is expected to be released by the Packers. The release will happen at 4 Eastern Time today, so there's always the potential that a team might come out of nowhere, offer them a deal for maybe a late round pick just so they have the chance to pick up Jaire. Maybe there's a 10 to 20% chance that happens. I think it's really hard for a GM to trade assets for Jaire Alexander given his injury history of late. He has missed 20 games the last 2 seasons. So I think the challenge that the Packers had of paying Jaire Alexander that contract will be a deciding factor on whether there is an opportunity for a last-second trade for Jaire Alexander. It's possible, since this information was leaked before 4 p.m. Eastern Time, that this was a attempt by the Packers to try to get something for Jaire before the paperwork goes in this afternoon. We'll see what happens there, and if there's an update on that front, we will let you know. But as of now, it is expected Jaire Alexander will be released by the Green Bay Packers this afternoon. So let's take a quick look at what this will do with the Green Bay Packers secondary. They have a couple options on the table here. They can look for a player via trade. Jalen Ramsey is currently on the trade block right now. There's also some lesser known players that could probably be traded for. But I think that's extremely unlikely here. I think the Packers, if they were going to make a move for a trade, would have done that before the start of training camp, minicamp, which starts tomorrow. I think they would have pulled the trigger before now because it would be beneficial to get that new player into these next 3 days of practice. So I think it's very unlikely, and it would be very unlike the Packers to trade for a corner right now. There's always the possibility they could do it later on before the trade deadline. But I think we have to look more likely at what the Green Bay Packers are going to do with their current players. So what I expect them to do on first and second downs, I expect Nate Hobbs to be on the outside in first and second down. You can move a player like Javon Bullard into the slot if that's something you want to see, if you want to see that ability in the secondary, or you could really just focus on playing players on the outside and having your safeties help on the third receiver on first and second down. Now, I think on clear passing downs, especially there's a strong possibility when a opponent like the Lions has a great player who likes to play in the slot a lot. You could move Carrington Valentine off the bench. He would be our first corner off the bench right now. So he would move off the bench, play the outside, and you can move Nate Hobbs into the slot in clear passing situations against an opponent that likes to put one of their best receivers in the slot. So I think there's a lot of options here for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, having Jaire, not having Jaire, the good thing about this move to release Jaire Alexander is it does give the team and the players certainty that they need to look at how they're going to build their secondary without Jaire into the mix. So, again, I think it makes sense to have Keyshawn Nixon on one boundary. You're going to have Nate Hobbs on another boundary. Javon Bullard is able to play the slot and help with the running game, defense against the running game on first and second downs. I think he has the physical tools to both help with stopping the run and help with stopping receivers on first and second down. So I think we definitely have options on the team to address that fact. In addition to that, I'm sure that the team is going to be looking for additional depth from other teams and or released players. That Brian Gutekunst is very good at churning the roster right now. So if there's anybody he had an eye on that's a free agent, look for him to maybe try to pick them up right now. As players are filtered on and off rosters throughout the NFL, look for Brian to look for an opportunity to add some additional depth. So there we go. So at least we have some certainty here. And something I really want to stress to Packer Nation here is the Green Bay Packers secondary is better today than the team that went on the field against the Eagles in the wild card game. The addition of Nate Hobbs is a significant improvement over what we had on the field in the playoffs. And that secondary held up really well against the eventual Super Bowl champions. It was not the secondary that cost the Green Bay Packers that playoff game. It was the fact that the Packers could not produce points on offense. So the addition of Nate Hobbs and the growth of the players on this roster is going to lead to a better product on the field than what we saw in that playoff game. So I don't want you to look at the release of Jaire Alexander as a subtraction, because 20 of the last 34 games, he was not on the field anyways. He was not on the field for the Packers most of last year, and they had an 11-6 record, and they went on to the playoffs. So with the addition of Nate Hobbs, Nate Hobbs is expected to play the boundary. He's expected to play inside as well. With the addition of Nate Hobbs and the growth of the players that are currently on the roster, I have every confidence that the Green Bay Packers could put together a very solid secondary, along with an improved pass rush, which we're going to expect to see as well, that is going to offset the loss of Jaire Alexander, which really isn't a factor because he was not a factor for this team last year. I can't look at any game where, number one, Jaire played, and number two, where he was a difference maker in the game. So I do fully expect that the Green Bay Packers secondary is going to be better this year than it was last year. There's no reason to panic. It would have been nice to have Jaire back, but now we have certainty. So the players in the position rooms now know Jaire is off the table, so they could focus on what they need to do with the players they have in the room to make the secondary work. We have a brilliant mind in Jeff Hafley. We have the addition of Nate Hobbs, and we have the maturity and development of all the players that are already on the roster to offset this. So Brian and the general manager staff 100% want to win a championship every year. And if they feel that releasing Jaire is better than keeping Jaire, we have to trust the process and trust the general manager staff to say, we have solutions in this room. We have solutions that we can try to add for depth as we get closer to the season. Jaire is not the answer. So we have to move on. I really loved Jaire's time with the Green Bay Packers. He was a great player when he was healthy. But we haven't seen that player we've seen that player 1 year of the last 4 years. The last 4 years. He missed 4 games in 3 years ago. Then he played all the games. Then the last 2 years, he missed 10 games a season. And that's just really not enough production for that salary cap space. So let's turn the page. We were already going to have a segment on what to expect in minicamp, which starts tomorrow. So let's talk about that right now. So my primary things to watch in minicamp right now, number one, does Eldon Jenkins show up for camp? It's mandatory minicamp, and he's been staying away from the team given his contract dispute. I expect Eldon Jenkins to show up for camp. I don't know whether he'll practice or not. We'll have to see how that process works. Does Eldon have a hamstring injury or a stomach ache or something that keeps him off the field as a negotiation tactic? Or does he play a good soldier, go out there, and maybe they have discussions off the field while he practices on the field? That would be the ideal solution. Maybe the Packers take some of this extra money that they're going to have from Jaire Alexander, maybe throw Eldon Jenkins some additional guaranteed money, something like that. Although it wouldn't be something that the Packers would typically do. But regardless, I expect if Eldon Jenkins is on the field, he'll be at center. If he's not on the field, I think they'll put someone else at center, and they're going to let the other offensive line battles really start in the next couple days if he does not practice. So I expect someone like Monk to maybe act as center while they let the rest of the offensive line start to gel if Eldon Jenkins does not practice. But Eldon Jenkins has historically been a very solid player who doesn't play a lot of games. So I do expect him to probably practice the next couple days so we can start seeing this offensive line start to develop and gel to what it's going to be at the start of the season. Do we see the Green Bay Packers in the next couple days give Zach Tom a new contract? Zach Tom has time on his deal. He's clearly outplayed that deal. So I think Zach Tom is going to practice. There's been no arguments or debate about his contract, at least publicly. So I think Zach Tom will practice, but maybe over between now and training camp, there's an opening window where they might talk about a new contract. They do like to do this while the player's in the building, so they can have a press release with the player signing the new contract. So maybe that happens over the next couple days. Regardless, Zach Tom is going to get a new contract before the end of the season. They might do it before training camp starts. They might do it during the season. They might wait till towards the end of the season to give him a new contract, but I will see that done for sure. Now that Jaire is out of the picture, the secondary needs to work on a new scheme that does not have him in the picture. Now, if you listen to what the coaching staff has said the last couple months, they've said, we're going to talk about certainties, we're going to talk about who's in the building, we're going to talk about what we know, and not talk about Jaire. So that tells me the team was already thinking with the mindset that Jaire was not going to be there. So they need to continue to work on new schemes and player development that will replace Jaire Alexander. So I expect to see a lot of that in the training camp. So with the Jaire issue out there, a lot of the media, a lot of people watching the practices were kind of like, this isn't what it's going to look like when Jaire comes back. But now Jaire is gone, so the media, the players, the coaching staff all need to be lockstep in focusing on what the secondary is going to look at like without Jaire Alexander. So with the departure of Jaire, the Packers now have $47 million in cap space. I expect them to use this cash to keep their own players past 2025. So between now and training camp, don't be surprised if you see extensions for players like Zach Tom and other players that could use maybe sort of a bump or an adjustment to their contract now that they have $47 million in cap space, which is one of the largest cap spaces available in the NFL right now. Now, they can carry some of that money to next year. So I expect a combination of giving a couple players some better contracts and then looking for them to carry some of that money to pay next year, since the Packers are projected to be over the salary cap in 2026. Now, that's before the inevitable adjustments of additional money going into the salary cap. But, that money can be used as a resource both for saving it for a rainy day, possibly for a trade for a corner, although I still think that's very unlikely, or using that to extend some of their existing players, which I think is a most likely example. So one thing I want to watch, and this is very interesting for me, is historically for mandatory minicamp, the third day of camp is used as a team building exercise. The Green Bay Packers will do some sort of a team exercise, go to a movie, go bowling, whatever they could find in the Green Bay area to do as a team building exercise. Historically, the third day of camp is what they've done that. Use that for, excuse me. It would not surprise me this year if they practiced all 3 days. And I think if they do that, that is a message from the coaching staff to the players that we have a sense of urgency this year and we need to focus on using as much time as possible on the field. So don't be surprised if you see the Packers practice on that third day of camp, which is historically has been a team building exercise. Now, we've already seen the team doing a lot of that stuff already. We had Jordan Love's softball game, and also something I really wanted to touch on quickly, there was a lot of news and information that the defensive line is actually getting together on the weekends on their own time to hang out and watch film. And I think that's a great sign for the defensive line that it's hungry and looking to improve in 2025. So maybe the team sees this other stuff that's going on and says, we're going to take that third day to work on the field. So don't be surprised if you see that. So just to wrap up here, sorry to see Jaire Alexander go. He was a great player when he was healthy, but we haven't seen that in quite some time. So I'm actually seeing this as a positive now that we have resolution. I was hoping that maybe they would work this out and maybe they would have Jaire for 2025. But the more that I think about it, if the team is ready to say goodbye to Jaire Alexander, that tells me that this coaching staff and the general manager staff feel that they're better off without him and can use those resources, salary cap money, spots on the roster, for a player that can help them more than Jaire Alexander. So I think it's time for us to say goodbye to Jaire and try to focus on what the team is going to do to replace him. I still think the team has already had this in their mind that this was the most likely outcome, and they've been practicing as if Jaire would not be there. So I'm very excited to see what we see in minicamp this week. We're going to have updates, of course, throughout the rest of the week as we get news and notes from minicamp, so stay tuned for that. And please give us a like and subscribe. I forgot to mention that earlier in the video. We're trying to grow up to hopefully 5,000 subs before the start of the NFL season. That would be great for a new channel to grow that much in just a couple of months. And those YouTube algorithms really factor in those likes and subscribe. So if you could factor that in, take a second to hit that like button or the subscribe button. We're going to have continuous coverage of minicamp and the off season. I'm going to be in Green Bay for all of training camp. I'm going to be in Green Bay for the owners meeting. So I'm going to bring you news and notes from those events. So give us a subscribe so you get that news as soon as it drops. And as always, go Packers, and looking forward to seeing what this secondary looks like in the next couple weeks. Talk to you soon.